Hello and welcome to WJTS in.form. This is a program we're going to talk about a topic that is not one that people like to talk about, but it's very important that we do. I'm Bill Potter, your host of in.form, and joining me in the studio is Janet Schnell. Janet is the president of Survivors of Suicide of Du Bois County. Janet, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I think first of all we should point out your colors are purple and teal, and you and I color coordinated today. It's something else.
Yeah.
This is a tough topic to talk about, but you know there have been suicides that have been in the news, celebrity suicides, and things like that. And even some locally that it's tough to deal with. This is a tough thing to talk about. It's hard for me to talk to you about this. Is that normal?
Yes, it's very normal to be afraid to talk about suicide. Number one, if we talk and we ask someone about it, we are not sure what to do. Mm-hmm. So we're afraid to even ask about the subject, and it's a very sensitive issue already, especially after a suicide death has occurred, because we don't really know how to respond.
Is this something we should talk about?
We definitely need to talk about it. Talking about suicide saves lives. We know that. We have research to prove it. Suicide prevention saves lives, and we need to start talking more to our kids, our family, our loved ones, because it's a very important issue. Just like learning CPR save lives for people who have heart attacks, we can learn suicide prevention can save lives for people who are suicidal depressed.
So if you're in this situation, you're talking to somebody you think is suicidal, mm-hmm. And if I use some of the wrong terms, let me know, because I guess some of this we have to make sure that we're using the right terms. I should talk to them about it? What should I do?
Yeah. First of all, I would suggest that you would take a suicide prevention training program, because it makes it much easier to know how to talk to someone about suicide. And I would suggest doing something like that, but it's being one-on-one, it's being real, it's just talking to someone. It's taking time out of your day to say you're important, and I want to know what's going on with your life. You don't have to use the right words, because we don't always use the right words, but you need to be real and just be honest to talk to someone to say, I know I'm worried about you, what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully they'll talk to you some more. They're probably hoping somebody asks them the question, but they don't want to ask it themselves.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, your organization is Survivors of Suicide of Du Bois County, and when we say survivors, we are talking about the people who are left behind.
Yes, the family members and friends who are left behind after a suicide death.
Because that is a traumatic thing for people to deal with. And I know at the Du Bois County 4-H Fairgrounds, part of the park, there's a really nice place there. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, that's actually with, I can't think of the name of the organization, but it's for families who've lost a child, and it's with any type of death. And they have a memorial that's out at the 4-H Fairgrounds. And it's a really nice place for people to get together, to be able to honor their child and have a place of consolence.
So is your organization that mostly deals with people, I guess, after helping people to deal?
Actually, Survivors of Suicide of Du Bois County is like no other support group mm-hmm. in the United States. We actually help with suicide prevention. We help with suicide intervention, what to do if you're worried about someone who's suicidal. We also help with people who have lost a loved one, so we call them suicide loss survivors.
Okay. We're
also advocates. We will go to the federal government, to our state government, and say, this is what we need to do, because this is what, as an instance, we were talking about with insurance. Previously, in the late 90s, insurance companies, life insurance companies, would deny benefits to family members if someone died by suicide. And as survivors, we said that's not fair.
Sure.
Because we have no money then for burial. We have no money. We've already lost so many benefits already. So we worked with the insurance companies through the federal government to go back and change that. And now they'll put a stipulation on there that if you get a policy within 2 to 3 years, if you die by suicide after that point, then the benefits will go back to the family. And they put that stipulation on there just basically so that someone doesn't go out and buy $1 million policy and the next day die by suicide.
Sure. Now, there are statistics that you've given me, and
mm-hmm.
It's kind of scary. Well, let's talk about those.
Yeah. Many people don't realize that every 32 seconds someone does attempt suicide in the United States. And of those 13.3, every 13.3 minutes, someone does die by suicide. The leading cause of death in Hoosiers is between the ages of 15 to 54. And we have had a dramatic increase within the last 3 years in the state of Indiana, but yet we're not doing anything about it. Typically, we see male, white, between 45 and 64, and they die by firearms, the use of a firearm. And in Du Bois County, we follow pretty close to that same demographics, white, 46 to 48, with a firearm also. So that's the part of the intervention training that we talk about, is if you're worried about someone, these are some of the steps that you can do to keep them safe until they've gotten really good mental health treatment. Statistically, I don't really like to talk about numbers, because for each number, that is a brother, a son, a father. And so I don't like to really use the numbers as much as I like to remind people that that is a person that would be deeply missed in our community and within our own families.
Okay. Survivor grief is tough.
Yeah.
What are different stages or different things that people have to deal with?
We go back by the 5 stages of grief, and that's with the suicide loss survivors also, with denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. But with the suicide death, we have even more steps. There are things that survivors have to deal with: shame, blame our own selves. We have a lot of guilt. Why didn't we? Big is to ask the question why. We have to ask why so many times until we feel comfortable with how it happened. Hopelessness. We feel hopeless. And there are many times that we would just rather go and be with that person that we lost, as with my brother who died. I knew I had 2 choices in life when Kent died. I could either follow the same footsteps as he did and die by suicide because I missed him that much, or I could have made a difference. And so I chose to make a difference, but it's hard because every time there's another suicide death, it comes back and hits me directly, and I miss him so much.
I was wondering about that. If someone has a relative, especially a close relative, that dies by suicide, whenever you hear of another suicide, I'm sure that hurts you even more than just, I mean, regular death is bad enough, but more than somebody that just loses somebody through natural causes.
Correct. Yes, it's very difficult when you hear of another suicide death, because you put yourself in that family's position and know how painful it is. And you just want to be able to offer hope and help and know it'll be 20 years in March for my brother when he died. And it does get easier. That for me, the first year was very difficult, but as the years went by, it has gotten much easier. But with each new suicide death, it takes me a while. I have to take another breath.
And that's why you've organized the group Survivors of Suicide of Du Bois County, for people to get together. What does this happen regularly, or just at certain times of the year? How often do you meet? And if somebody is thinking, I really wish I could talk to somebody because I'm a survivor, from what you're saying on TV, what do they do? Contact
me. I will let you know all about the meetings. I'll put you on an email list, and we'll talk about, I have certain topics that we talk about at each meeting. So we've talked about survivor death, we'll talk about holidays, we'll talk about how to cope. And so you can always contact me. My email address, if that's okay?
Sure.
Is the number 1, suicide survivor. So it's spelled out as SUICIDE, SURVIVOR @gmail.com. Or you can call me on my cell phone at 812-630-6779. And we do have support group meetings once a month, but Survivors of Suicide offers a lot more. We're willing to come into the homes if you're not ready for a support group. We will bring a group who will come into a home, a small group, and be able to talk to your family members one-on-one. And we can do so many more services out there than just the support group meeting. Support group meeting is a once-a-month meeting that we meet and get together, but we can, if you're not ready, let me know and we can always come into your home.
And a lot of this, you have to be ready for it. You have to make that call or make that contact to get yourself started. And probably it's very important that you do, rather than try and deal with that yourself. That makes it very hard.
This is, as I said before, this grief is like no other grief because of the multitude of emotions that happen. And delaying the grief doesn't make it go away. Hitting it head on and starting to talk about it and meeting with others so that you're not alone, so that you know you're not alone, is a big key issue. I remember after Kent died, I just felt like no one else understood my grief. And so we actually attended a support group in Louisville, Kentucky, and that's when we decided to bring it back to Du Bois County.
And then you find out there are other people,
yes,
unfortunately, who are in the same situation as you, and it's good to talk to them.
Yes.
For somebody who may be contemplating suicide, and if you're the relative or the friend and you see that, is there a number they can call? What steps should they take? Because it shouldn't be up to you necessarily to handle it as much as get them going in the right direction. Is that the right way to look at it?
Correct. There is a national hotline number, a national suicide prevention hotline number that you can call if you are thinking about suicide or if you're worried about someone who's suicidal. It's 1-800-273-8255. It's answered by people who have taken training with the American Association of Suicidology, so they know what to say, they know how to talk to someone, and they know the resources that we have locally to be able to get you help.
And maybe if you're the person that sees this, you don't know the right things to say or what necessarily you should say, but you still need to make some sort of connection. Maybe people don't do that because they're afraid I'm wrong. You know, I don't want to pry into somebody's life, but you should anyway.
Right, and I think sometimes we're afraid that maybe they need more help than what we can give them. Sometimes their suicidal thoughts are so real that they need to have an assessment by a trained professional to know at what level they are, if they need to be protected to save themselves, or if a counseling session would be more helpful. But only a trained professional can do something like that. And so that's part of what the training that I provide is to know what to do, but also know when to take the person to the resource. Your local hospital, Memorial Hospital, is an excellent resource. Take them there so that a trained social worker can actually assess them for suicidality.
Okay, tough decisions to make that people have to make. Do you need financial help?
We are always in need of financial help.
A lot of organization doesn't, but how can somebody be part of that?
We are a 501c3 nonprofit agency, and our money that we get from donations will go out and help. We have a locker full of books because survivors really like to read. They want to know more information about suicide, and even other people out in the field who are becoming mental health therapists want to read about suicide. So we have a locker that's full of DVDs and books that people can always rent out, to check out. But we also need to keep educated. And so our survivors, who are completely volunteers, no one gets paid from our organization, needs help so that we can go out to, there's a conference that's coming up in Cleveland, Ohio, so that we can learn more about helping survivors. And so we need financial help so that we're able to pay for the fees to be able to go to these kind of conferences. And then that information we bring back to our community. The conference I was talking about in Cleveland it's Columbus, Ohio. That is a really good program because it has trained us so that we can go to the scene of a suicide death. We help law enforcement, the coroner, first responders, so that if there's a suicide death, they can do the investigation, and we're there to help take care of the family members. And so that's part of what this conference does, is trained us so that we can be able to provide that service here in Du Bois County.
Now you have an event coming up at VUJC in October.
I do, yes,
okay.
yes. Working with VUJC, we know that there's a need for suicide prevention training. And so on October the 23rd, between 6 and 8 p.m., we are going to have a training session at VUJC. And you can get in contact with Jim McFall from Continuing Education. He sets up all the registration, or you have my number and email that I can always forward that to you.
And that's open to anybody and everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Everybody.
Do they need to register ahead of time, or can they just show up on that date?
It's better to register ahead of time so that we know how many seats that we need to have and have the materials ready.
And there's plenty of time to do that, but October 23rd, and again, just contact you.
Correct.
Right. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
If you're thinking about suicide, there is help. There's hope. Call the national hotline number. Your life, your loss of life, directly affects everyone around you. Don't think suicide is a solution, because it's not. You leave a lot of people behind who are left for the rest of their life with this loss. And so there is help. If the national hotline number that I had, 1-800-273-8255, you can also contact me. I'm more than willing to sit down and talk to anyone, and we'll figure this out together, because you're not alone. And also the suicide loss survivors, I'm here for you. You're not alone. We will set up, we will find people who can meet with you, who can talk to you, because we have different people who are part of the organization. Mother to mother, you can have contact, sibling to sibling. We'll make it happen.
So help is available. Just use it.
Yeah.
Janet, thank you very much for being on our show.
You're welcome.
Our guest has been Janet Schnell. She is the president of Survivors of Suicide of Du Bois County. Any way you'd like to help them out, they obviously need some financial help like everybody does. But if you need some help, give Janet a call. Thank you for watching WJTS Inform. We are local people watching local people.